Welcome to Tell Me More, the all-steel podcast where design meets innovation and we explore the limitless potential of workspaces. In this exclusive series, we're peeling back the layers of workplace design. From the psychology of colors to the future of hybrid work, join us as we open doors to conversations with industry leaders, architects, and designers who redefine the modern workplace. This is Tell Me More, brought to you by Allsteel, because when it comes to designing the future, there's always more to discover.
Hello, and welcome to our latest podcast on our Tell Me More podcast series. I'm Andrea Gauss, Director of Client Solutions at Allsteel, and today we're going to be talking with Amy on the important subject of climate. Amy, tell us a little bit more about who you are.
Hi, Andrea. I'm Amy McCarville, and I am the Corporate Social Responsibility Manager at HNI Corporation.
Okay, so for those of you who do not know, HNI is the parent company of Allsteel and Allsteel Corporation, and we have a great group of individuals at HNI Corporate who help us think through all things related to sustainability. And Amy does a lot of work with our operations folks around this important topic of climate. So we're going to just kind of walk into the subject here real briefly at a super high level. What should we think about when we think about climate? Are there any three-letter acronyms that we should know right off the bat?
Sure, yeah, there's a lot of acronyms in this field. And so the first place to start is GHG, greenhouse gas emissions. And so those are those emissions that are driving climate change, and they trap heat in the atmosphere. And the primary one that gets referred to a lot is carbon dioxide. That's actually the primary greenhouse gas emissions from human activities. But when we're talking carbon footprints, which is an organization or maybe a building or any particular entity's full amount of carbon emissions, we really have to take into account a total of 7 different gases for accounting and reporting purposes. And those include not only carbon dioxide, but also methane and nitrous oxide and even leaks from refrigerant. So that's kind of the place to start.
Okay. So we've all heard scope 1, 2, and 3 as it pertains to climate change and greenhouse gas emissions. Can you, at a really high level, help us to understand the differences between those 3?
Yeah, sure. So scopes just help us categorize emissions for accounting and reporting purposes. Scope 1, those are the ones we typically think of. Those are the direct emissions that occur from sources that we own or control. So these are those emissions where we're burning fossil fuel on site for heat, for energy, maybe some processes. Another example is the gasoline we use in our cars. Scope 2 are indirect emissions from purchased energy. So think of this as the fossil fuels that are burned off-site, such as at a power plant. But we're purchasing that energy and using it as the end user. So it's electricity primarily that we're purchasing from the grid. And then there's scope 3. Scope 3 is essentially everything else. It's value chain emissions that happen because of the activities of our company, but in sources that we don't own or control. So there are 15 categories actually of scope 3 emissions, and they range from the raw materials, the emissions that go into the raw materials we purchase, the transportation of those raw materials. It's also the transportation of our products to our customers, things like business travel, even employee commuting, the use of our products. So all those other things that are happening maybe at our suppliers or at our customers. And these are actually where the bulk of our emissions lie.
Okay. So HNI is doing quite a bit of work in this area. We have goals pertaining to our scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions. Can you talk at a high level, pick a category 1, 2, or 3, all of them, and kind of talk a little bit about the journey that we're on here?
Sure. Yeah, well, to have an impact, you're right. We really have to reduce emissions in all of these scopes. And for our scope 1 and 2 emissions, those again are the ones that we're burning fuel on site or our purchased electricity. We do have a target around those to reduce 35% by 2025. And I'll mention that this is also a goal that's been approved by the Science Based Target Initiative, which just means that it's aligned with the Paris Agreement and keeping global temperatures from rising more than 1.5 degrees Celsius. But this is a goal that HNI has been achieving since 2020. And actually, at the end of 2022, we had to reduce these emissions by 64%. And the way that we did this was through energy efficiency efforts and renewable electricity. So if we want to touch more on energy efficiency for a moment, we actually have a separate target here that's helped us get there, and that is to reduce our energy intensity by 50% by 2035. So one key thing that I want to bring up is that HNI owns many of the facilities where we produce our product. This gives us control over that energy and emissions and the ability to reduce it. So that's really helped us a lot. And we've been able to conduct energy audits at our facilities, allowing us to identify areas for improvement.
Then when you talk about scope 2, and obviously as we're consuming energy off of the grid, what have we done? Have we done anything locally when we think about our local municipalities there to kind of work together around the effort?
Yes. So we actually, in 2022, committed to a partnership with our local utility in Muscatine. And we have several manufacturing facilities in Muscatine, Iowa. And this partnership is going to bring renewable energy options to the area and provide renewable electricity to about 10% of our operations here.
What I love about what we're doing here is that we get the benefit, but we're also growing the opportunity for green energy in and around Muscatine as a community. And so by partnering into this effort, it's not just the industry, it's also the residential and other commercial areas as well, which I think is great. Anyway, I interrupted you. You're in the middle of a thought.
Yeah, no, that's fine. And I just wanted to also say that we have committed as an organization to purchase 100% renewable electricity annually through our membership with the RE100. So we have been actually purchasing renewable electricity every year since 2020. And that's helped us to achieve that Scope 1 and 2 goal.
And so then what about the hardest one, Scope 3? What are we doing there?
Scope 3. We do actually have a Scope 3 target, and it's again approved by the Science Based Targets Initiative.
What would be the acronym for that? If somebody heard an acronym for Science Based Target Initiative, SBTI.
SBTI.
All right. So if you're wondering what that is, that's what that's referring to.
Yes. We have a target to reduce our Scope 3 emissions 40% per ton of goods sold by 2035. And so again, like you said, this is a challenging one because we don't necessarily have that direct control over those emissions. Instead, we have to look beyond our operations. We have to engage with our suppliers and our partners. One of the ways we're doing this is we've begun to score and assess our suppliers on what they are doing to reduce their own emissions, which comes to us through the embodied carbon in the products that we purchase from them. We also participate in the EPA SmartWay program, which helps advance sustainable transportation. We work with our carriers even to encourage efficient transportation. We're also building a program to engage further with our suppliers and obtain even more emissions data and work with them on their emissions efforts. But more than that, we're performing life cycle assessments on our products to understand the embodied carbon that is in those and identify where we can improve there.
That's right, because once you've built the product, once you've shipped it to where it's going, there's very few things that can be done at that point to change carbon footprint. Certainly not of the furniture. You could of the building, of the total building itself. But it's really important that as we're designing furniture right at the beginning, so many of our design decisions, where we're sourcing it from, the material itself, once those decisions are made, that lives on for, really for decades as we continue to manufacture that product. So it's been a big focus of product development for sure. That's great. Amy, what's the biggest, would you say, struggle? What's the hardest thing right now, whether it's information we're trying to get a hold of, something we're trying to wrap our mind around? Where do you find kind of the tension right now in this topic?
Sure. Yeah, so data is always a challenge when you're talking about scope 3, and it's a journey. So we have, at the beginning, had to use data that's industry averages. But as I mentioned before, we're on that path to engage more with our suppliers, get more of that primary data, which just means their actual emissions data that pertains to the products we're purchasing that go into our own products, to really get information that's actionable for us that we can measure and then start to improve.
Great. Very insightful. I think it's going to help our audience just kind of wrap their brain around this important topic, understand some acronyms a little bit better, be able to think about it more directly, more honestly, more clearly. So with that, I think, unless you have anything else that you were like, I really wanted to say this thing about climate and I didn't get a chance to.
There's so much, but I think we've addressed a lot of the key things to start out the conversation.
Okay, that sounds great. Well, thank you all for joining us for our latest conversation, and join us next time for more Tell Me More.
Thank you. That brings us to the end of another fascinating episode of Tell Me More. We hope you enjoyed our conversation around the important topic of climate. Stay tuned for the next episode in our sustainability series, where we'll explore circularity. As we sign off, remember that the conversation doesn't end here. Connect with us on social media at AllSteel and share your thoughts, questions, or even your favorite moments from the podcast. We love hearing from our engaged and curious audience. Until then, thanks for listening.